The series begins at Hunsu Group, a large and successful company, where an important meeting is being held with the company's top leaders. At that moment, Jin Lee-soo, the owner, wants his son, Isu, to join the meeting. However, Isu is much more interested in playing his favorite police-themed video game than attending business meetings. Isu, who loves excitement and adventure, decides to take things up further by renting an entire shopping mall to play his game. Soon, he dresses up in a realistic police uniform, complete with toy weapons that look very convincing, and takes on the role of a hero, ready to rescue a woman in danger within the game's story. Meanwhile, in the real world, a skilled police team led by Kang Yoon is working hard on a serious mission. They're tracking down a friend of a murder suspect and, using their detective skills, manage to catch him quickly. At that moment, they pressure him into revealing where the suspect might be hiding. Later that evening, Kang Yoon and her team head to a bar, hoping to catch a criminal who is supposed to appear there. After hours of waiting with no sign of the suspect, Kang Yoon decides to end the stakeout for the night. As Kang Yoon walks to her car, she notices two people following her. Her detective instincts kick in, and she decides to follow them to see what's going on. When she catches up, she finds Isu holding a knife, his hands covered in what appears to be blood, standing over an unconscious man. Without hesitation, Kang Yoon pushes Isu, making him fall into a pile of old boxes, which ends up breaking his nose. Afterward, Kang Yoon takes Isu to the police station for questioning, while the injured man is rushed to the hospital. At the station, one of Kang Yoon's colleagues tells her that the man they arrested is actually famous with lots of fans and also happens to be the son of the Hunsu Group owner. Not long after, their superior arrives and informs them that they won't be able to continue the investigation due to Isu's powerful family connections. When questioned about the incident, Isu explains that he acted in self-defense, claiming that the unconscious man had attacked his friend first and then threatened him. Kang Yoon, however, is suspicious. She remembers not finding a knife at the scene, which makes her question Isu's story. Not long after, Isu tries to call his friend to come forward and tell the truth to the police. However, his friend is too scared to speak up, which makes things even more difficult for Isu. Meanwhile, when a member of Kang Yoon's team calls to inform someone about Isu's arrest, a reporter nearby overhears the conversation. Sensing a big story, the reporter begins to dig deeper and confirms that Isu is indeed being held at the police station. This news quickly spreads, catching the attention of journalists eager for a sensational story. The following day, Jin Myong-chul, who is running for mayor of Seoul, is preparing for a big conference. He expects his son, Isu, to attend and show family support. However, he has no idea that Isu is being held for his involvement in a violent incident. When reporters ask Myong-chul about Isu's situation, his family is stunned and deeply embarrassed. Upset and angry, the family rushes to the police station to see Isu. At that moment, Myong-chul, furious about the potential impact on his reputation, publicly disowns Isu, declaring that any trouble his son has brought upon himself is his own problem and not the family's. While this situation unfolds, Kang Yoon quickly returns to the crime scene to search for the knife Isu mentioned. After a thorough search, she finds a knife in a water channel nearby. Taking it as evidence, she heads to the hospital to investigate the victim. She then examines the injuries and checks fingerprints, ultimately identifying the victim as the murderer her team had been pursuing all along. With this new information, Kang Yoon reports to her superiors, revealing that Isu had only acted in self-defense against a dangerous criminal. Despite Kang Yoon's breakthrough, her discovery stirs up even more trouble. She faces threats of losing her job, while two of her colleagues are warned they could be sent to remote areas and face a 3-month pay cut. Just when the situation seems bleak, Isu's older brother, Seungju, steps in to support them. Not long after, Seungju arranges a meeting with the police chiefs and offers a solution. They then decide to hold a press conference to set the record straight. During the conference, they clarify that the news about Isu being violent was false. Instead, they explain that Isu had been collaborating with the police for 2 months, helping them in the search for a murderer and saving lives. Kang Yoon agrees to go along with her boss's plan. and the press conference brings a sense of relief as they correct the misunderstanding for the public. At first, Isu didn't want to go along with the plan, but after some thought, he changed his mind and decided to join the police force to help improve his father's reputation, as his father was running for mayor. When Isu officially joined, everyone at the police station welcomed him with excitement. There was a grand ceremony with a red carpet, cheerful music, and flowers everywhere. Kang Yoon even wore a funny police mascot costume to greet him, adding some humor to the event. At that moment, Isu walked down the red carpet confidently, ready to begin his new journey as a police officer. The next morning, when Isu's assistant tried to wake him up, he was still lying around, being lazy. His older brother then came in and asked him to go along with their plan to boost their father's reputation. However, Isu stubbornly refused, telling his brother he was making a mistake. Without pushing further, Sungju left to prepare for a press conference. It was revealed that the family had a backup plan. If things didn't improve, Myong-chul would withdraw from the mayoral race and move abroad to manage the family company. When Isu heard about this plan, he finally decided to listen to his brother and showed up at the press conference. As his brother began speaking at the podium, ready to reveal the truth, Isu suddenly stepped forward and spoke up. He announced that he wanted to explain what really happened, taking the crowd by surprise. His brother smiled, relieved to see Isu in his police uniform, ready to face the media. Reporters quickly started asking questions, especially about how Isu managed to catch the murderer. Isu then answered confidently, saying he just followed his instincts. Later, he received a warm welcome from the public. At that point, Kang Yoon hesitated to shake his hand, but after a nudge from her boss, she finally extended her hand and welcomed him. However, when Isu joined Kang Yoon's team, the reception was far from friendly. They told him not to come to work if he was only interested in having fun or posting on social media, reminding him that the police station was a place for serious work. Determined, Isu insisted on taking his job seriously and came to work. However, Kang Yoon and the rest of the team went into a meeting, leaving him alone. Despite this, one team member was kind enough to greet him and showed him a chair. When Isu tried to sit, though, the chair was unstable, and he ended up falling in front of everyone. In the meeting, Kang Yoon requested her boss to limit Isu's tasks to paperwork, thinking he wouldn't be suited for field work. But her boss refused, reminding them all that Isu's position wasn't just a favor. He explained that Isu had been brought on to cover for their weaknesses, as they had failed to catch the murderer themselves. In another room, Isu asked his assistant to arrange a fancy lunch for everyone at Kangha Police Station. Soon, the station was transformed into something that looked more like an upscale restaurant. Staff members served food to everyone, making it feel like a high-class dining experience. Not stopping there, Isu even turned his desk into a gaming station and began playing video games with great enthusiasm. Seeing all of this, Kang Yoon became annoyed and immediately ordered that the restaurant be cleaned up, returning the station to normal. Kang Yoon was upset with Isu for treating their workplace like his personal playground. To make him uncomfortable, she decided to assign him boring tasks, knowing that he disliked anything ordinary. For his first task, Kang Yoon instructed Isu to write a summary of a closed case. Shortly after starting, Isu asked the police chief for help with the report, but the chief directed Kang Yoon to assist him instead. Later, other members of the team were tasked with finding a 76-year-old man who had gone missing. Although this task wasn't assigned to Kang Yoon's team, she decided to involve them anyway to keep Isu busy and, hopefully, bored. However, Isu quickly turned things around. To motivate his team, he offered an expensive watch as a reward to anyone who could locate the missing man. This unexpected move shocked everyone at the police station, and several teammates eagerly joined the search. They were impressed by his bold gesture. It didn't take long before one of them found the missing man and brought him home. Because of this, the team celebrated their success, applauding the effort. The next day, a new case came in about an artist who had been murdered at a port. Kang Yoon didn't want Isu at the crime scene, so she instructed him to stay in the car. But instead of waiting, Isu rented a boat to relax, ignoring her orders entirely, which only irritated Kang Yoon more. After the victim's body was sent for an autopsy, Kang Yoon asked Isu to accompany her to the artist's agency. Once there, She assigned him the task of gathering information from other artists while she spoke with the CEO for more details. Without offering any guidance, she left Isu alone at the agency entrance, making him feel unappreciated and frustrated. Later that evening, Kang Yoon went home and had dinner with her father, who offered her ramen and soju. As they ate, they talked about her work. Kang Yoon then shared details about the case she was handling and mentioned her new colleague, whom she found troublesome. Suddenly, her mother joined the conversation and suggested that Kang Yoon should start dating a handsome and kind man. Hearing this, Kang Yoon firmly declined, brushing off her mother's suggestion. Meanwhile, Isu met with a friend who shared how poorly his coworkers were treating him, as if they didn't value him at all. His friend suggested that maybe his colleagues acted this way because they were jealous or even afraid that Isu might succeed in catching criminals. Hearing this, Isu felt a new sense of motivation and decided to put in even more effort at work. The following day, Kang Yoon took Isu to the autopsy room and firmly reminded him that this was a serious place where they examined murder victims carefully. She warned him not to treat it lightly. Unexpectedly, Isu assured her that he wasn't weak, but as soon as he saw the victim, he suddenly imagined himself drowning, which made him feel short of breath, and he started to feel faint. Alarmed, Kang Yoon tried to snap him out of it, but Isu quickly acted like he was just joking. This annoyed both Kang Yoon and the forensic doctor. After returning to the police station, they learned that their suspect was Cheon Tae-sung, the son of DN Media's owner, who had just posted his location on social media. Without waiting, Isu set out to confront him, but the guards outside the building quickly chased him away. At that moment, Kang Yoon was arguing with the guard at the door, who wouldn't let them enter without a warrant. Inside, Cheon Tae-sung gave orders for his men to attack Kang Yoon and Isu. Soon after, a fight broke out, but despite the odds, Kang Yoon and Isu managed to defend themselves and overpower Tae-sung's guards. Although Kang Yoon had been reluctant to have Isu on her team, the two still managed to work together. They finally arrested Cheon Tae-sung after dealing with his guards. During questioning, Tae-sung admitted to killing the artist, but insisted he didn't mean to do it. He explained that he had only wanted to kiss her, but when she resisted, he accidentally strangled her until she passed out. Following this confession, Kang Yoon ordered her team to test Tae-sung for drugs. However, Tae-sung claimed that if drugs were found, they actually belonged to his older brother, Tae-young. During this time, Tae-young suddenly appeared at the police station, followed by their eldest brother, Tae-jun, and their mother, who was the second wife of DN Group's owner. Even the first wife, Tae-jun's mother, showed up. In the station, the entire family began arguing loudly until Kang Yoon stepped in to break up the chaos. Tae-young then admitted that, while under the influence of drugs on a large boat, he accidentally pushed a woman who had approached him into the lake. The investigation team initially believed that the woman didn't drown, but Tae-young claimed he couldn't remember much due to the drugs he'd taken. However, Isu made an important observation that shifted the investigation. He noticed scratch marks on a cruise ship that matched bruises found on the victim's arms. This detail led the team to suspect that the murder might have actually taken place on a different cruise ship, which would explain why no blood was found at the initial scene. Now, the investigation team needed to look into other cruise ships that could be involved and verify the suspects' alibis related to them. This new direction promised to uncover stronger evidence and reveal the truth behind the mysterious deaths. Adding to the mystery, a phone call between Tae-jun, the eldest son of the DN Group owner, and the victim raised questions about their relationship. This connection could be crucial to understanding the case. Not only that, the fact that the victim's death occurred just 10 days prior made the investigation even more pressing. Tae-jun then explained that he had arranged to have dinner with the artist, but had to cancel at the last moment. He mentioned that the artist had also met with the head of the DN Group. When Kang Yoon questioned the DN Group head's wife, she revealed that the victim had shown interest in meeting her husband and dismissively called her a gold digger. With this information, the team decided to investigate further at the restaurant where Tae-jun and the victim had met. When they spoke to the waiter at the restaurant, they learned that Tae-jun and the victim only spoke briefly before he left. Hearing this, Kang Yoon requested permission to search all ships at Kangha Port for evidence of the murder. However, their boss denied the request and instructed them to gather more concrete evidence first. Soon after, Kang Yoon and her team discussed ways to get onto the ships at Kungha port without official permission. Suddenly, Isu came up with an idea. They could sneak onto the ships because he had special access to the port. To make things interesting, they made a bet. If Isu couldn't find the murderer, he would have to do administrative work, but if he succeeded, Kang Yoon would have to officially accept him onto the team. Kang Yoon agreed, and they got ready to head to the port. Not long after, Isu located the exact ship where the murder had taken place. Using a special liquid that reveals traces of blood, he uncovered both bloodstains and the fingerprints of the true culprit. As a result, they discovered that the real murderer was actually the secretary of the DN Group's leader. At the same time, when they learned that the DN Group leader's second wife was planning to flee the country, they rushed to the airport but found the road blocked. Thinking quickly, Isu arranged for a helicopter with his assistant's help. They then flew to the airport and managed to arrest both the first wife of the DN Group leader and the secretary. During the investigation back at the station, Tae-jun, the leader's eldest son, showed up. Isu informed him that his mother had confessed to the murder. Unexpectedly, Tae-jun put on a show of crying, but when Isu asked him to wait in another room, he caught a glimpse of Tae-jun smirking, which raised his suspicions. Later, Isu met with the DN Group leader's second wife and managed to record evidence that revealed Tae-jun as the true mastermind behind the murder. It turned out that Tae-jun planned to blame his mother so he could take over his father's position as the chairman of DN Group. On his way back to the police station, Isu tried to call Kang Yoon, but she ignored his calls. So, he sent her a message, urging her to detain Tae-jun temporarily. Finally, Kang Yoon agreed. When Isu arrived, he asked Tae-jun to step out of the car and then played the recording that exposed his involvement. With this proof, Isu successfully arrested Tae-jun. Later, Isu received a VIP invitation to Youngjae's solo art exhibition. When he arrived, he wandered around, admiring the paintings, until he heard shouting nearby. Rushing toward the noise, he found a man lying injured on the floor with a knife still lodged in his stomach. As soon as the guests saw the injured man, panic spread, and they quickly called the police. Isu stepped forward, showing his police ID and identifying himself as an officer. He immediately instructed the exhibition management to lock down the building, suspecting the attacker might still be inside. Then he called Kang Yoon, who was asleep at home, and asked her to come to the gallery right away. Despite it being her day off, Kang Yoon arrived promptly to take over the investigation. She checked on Mr. No's condition and organized the evacuation, asking the guests to leave the gallery while she collected their contact information. At that moment, Isu felt certain that the attacker was still somewhere in the building. However, Kang Yoon discovered that Mr. No had actually died about 10 hours earlier, with purple spots visible on his body, a sign he had been dead for some time. Not only that, the fluid leaking from his body was red paint, not blood. When they questioned Mr. No's assistant, Kwon Do-jun, he explained that he had left early that evening to double-check the paintings for the exhibition. Do-jun claimed that Mr. No was well-liked and couldn't imagine anyone holding a grudge against him. Yet his words clashed with the gallery director's account. She then described Mr. No as having a temper and recalled an incident from a week earlier when a woman had splashed red paint on one of his paintings. After gathering some clues, Kang Yoon and Isu decided to visit Mrs. No's home. Upon arriving, they were surprised by her calm reaction to her husband's death. She explained that she no longer had feelings for him and therefore felt no anger or desire for revenge. She even admitted that she had been with her lover on the night of the murder. With new insights about Mr. No's character, Isu and Kang Yoon returned to speak with Do-jun again. This time, he showed them a video of the woman splashing red paint on Mr. No's artwork. To their surprise, they learned that the woman was the mother of a young artist who had been a victim of Mr. No's deceit. It was revealed that the woman's daughter had been a talented painter, but Mr. No frequently copied her work without giving her any credit. When she demanded recognition for her art, Mr. No offered her a scholarship abroad and urged her to stay silent about the copying. However, Mr. No later accused the young artist of plagiarism, damaging her reputation and leaving her devastated. This betrayal left her feeling helpless and furious, especially upon hearing of Mr. No's upcoming exhibition. Out of anger and frustration, Her mother had splashed red paint on his painting as a way to express her daughter's pain and her own outrage. At that time, there were 4 main suspects in the murder case, each with a different story about where they were when the crime happened. This made it difficult for Kang Yoon to piece together the truth. Therefore, she needed more evidence to unravel the mystery. During the investigation, they discovered that Mr. No, the victim, had been stabbed 3 times. 2 of the stab wounds were on his back and weren't very deep. However, the 3rd wound, a deep stab to his chest, was fatal and caused his death. Meanwhile, Isu had recently bought a painting covered in red paint. He took it to his old house, which had once belonged to his mother. While trying to hang the painting, he was startled by a mouse and screamed in fear. Frightened, he called Mr. Choi and his neighbor, who turned out to be Kang Yoon. Kang Yoon rushed over, thinking Isu was in danger, only to find out he was simply scared of a mouse. Despite the misunderstanding, Isu asked her to stay, convinced that the mouse was still nearby. Determined to sleep safely, he even set up a tent in the middle of his house. As they waited, Kang Yoon noticed a photograph of Isu's mother in the room and asked if this was his childhood home. Isu confirmed and shared that he had lived there with his mother until she passed away when he was just 7. It was only after her death that he learned he was the son of the owner of Hansu Group. While tidying up, Isu noticed a piece of the painting had fallen off. Behind it, he found a hidden signature belonging to Kwon Do-jun. Without delay, he brought the painting to the gallery and found Do-jun just as he was about to leave. With a serious look, Isu informed Do-jun that the painting was damaged and pointed out the signature, waiting for an explanation. Meanwhile, back at the police station, Detective Kang Yoon was busy gathering more information. Suddenly, a critical discovery came to light. The person suspected of entering the gallery on the night of Mr. No's murder wasn't a woman at all, but a man dressed as a woman. The disguise was so realistic that it matched the description of the woman who had previously splashed red paint on Mr. No's artwork. In addition, they found online records showing that Kwon Do-jun had recently purchased an orange scarf identical to the one worn by the person who damaged the painting. Realizing this, Kang Yoon urgently instructed her team to dig deeper into Do-jun's involvement. At the same time, sensing that he was about to be exposed, Do-jun became panicked and desperate. When faced with Isu, he reacted violently, hitting Isu with a hard object, knocking him out, and injuring him badly. When Isu regained consciousness, he pleaded with Do-jun to stop, but the situation had already turned dangerously intense. However, Do-jun wouldn't stop and kept trying to attack Isu. Summoning his strength, Isu managed to punch Do-jun, knocking him to the ground. Once Do-jun was down, Isu demanded to know why he had killed Mr. No. At that moment, Do-jun confessed that even though he had worked for Mr. No for 10 years, he never felt appreciated or valued. All the fame and success of Mr. No's paintings actually came from his hard work, as he was the true artist behind many of the pieces. Despite facing unfair treatment, and even reaching a point where he almost wanted to harm himself, Do-jun kept silent, holding on to a hope that he would someday be recognized as a great painter too. However, his dreams were crushed when Mr. No canceled his scholarship to study abroad, accusing him of presenting a fake portfolio. Hearing this, Isu revealed that Do-jun had misunderstood. The artwork Mr. No copied actually belonged to a student who had died tragically. Realizing this, Do-jun became enraged and in a moment of despair, hurt himself with a shard of glass. Isu, shocked, wanted to help, but just then Kang Yoon arrived and quickly instructed Isu to step aside. Because of this, Do-jun was rushed to the hospital, and Kang Yoon expressed disappointment in Isu for not reporting the situation sooner, as it caused Do-jun to try the unthinkable. The following day, Kang Yoon visited Do-jun in the hospital to gather more details. There, Do-jun admitted that on the night before the exhibition, he had pretended to leave but secretly returned through the back entrance. He had stabbed Mr. No in the back and then fled. However, guilt overcame him, and he returned later only to find Mr. No fatally wounded. Kang Yoon then asked him about an orange scarf he had bought from a secondhand seller. Do-jun explained that the scarf actually belonged to Mr. No's wife, and he had simply picked it up on her behalf. He also mentioned whether the detective had found Mr. No's safe key, which they hadn't. This clue helped Kang Yoon finally piece together the identity and motive of the true murderer. With this information, they devised a new plan to catch Mr. No's wife and her lover. They staked out the bank where Mr. No kept his safe. During this time, Ai-soo, disguised as a bank officer, waited in the safe room. When Mr. No's wife arrived, he informed her that the safe key bore her fingerprints and traces of blood. This crucial evidence led to the arrest of both Mrs. No and her boyfriend for the murder. After the truth was revealed, Ai-soo contacted the gallery director, and they decided to hold an exhibition in memory of Lee Ye-soon, the student who had been mistreated by Mr. No. On the day of the exhibition, Lee Ye-soon's mother personally thanked Ai-soo for his kindness and support. The next day, Kang Yoon received a new case about an elderly man who had died after choking on a rice cake. The investigation team initially concluded it was an accident since there were no signs of violence, and nothing seemed missing from his home. However, at the Gangnam police station, the old man's grandson told Ai-soo that a precious item, a gold seal from the Joseon era, was missing from his grandfather's belongings. When Ai-soo shared the news about the missing seal with his team, they didn't believe it was authentic. Still, Ai-soo was confident it was genuine, leading to a bet. If it turned out to be murder, his partner would take the blame, but if it was indeed an accident, Ai-soo would face the punishment. That evening, Ai-soo met with an antiques expert and showed him a photo of the gold seal. The expert confirmed it was real and valuable. At the same time, Kang Yoon discovered two similar cases in nearby neighborhoods, being handled by another police team. As a result, she consulted the autopsy doctor about the rice cake found in the old man's throat. Shortly after, the team learned that the rice cake hadn't been eaten in a normal way. Instead, someone had cut it and placed it in the victim's throat to make the death appear accidental. Further investigation revealed that nicotine had been injected into the man's body through a mole, adding another suspicious detail. Following this, Kang Yoon and Ai-soo visited the homes of two other recent elderly victims to see if anything valuable had gone missing in those cases. The children of both victims mentioned that jewelry and large sums of money were missing, but they hadn't reported it because the police had already classified the deaths as accidents. After returning home from the investigation, Ai-soo noticed that all three victims had attended the same church. They decided to speak with the priest at the church to gather more information, but their visit didn't uncover anything helpful. However, when they inquired about the church's finances, they learned that the financial records had mysteriously disappeared 2 months ago. This clue hinted at a possible connection. Shortly after, another team member found CCTV footage taken around the elderly victim's house. In the video, 2 volunteers who took photos for funerals were seen visiting the home. They suspected that the murderer might have disguised himself as one of the volunteers. Not only that, they also learned that an ancient Joseon seal similar to the one stolen was set to be sold for $1 billion, adding a strong motive for the theft and murder. At that moment, Ai-soo insisted they attempt to buy the ancient seal that very night, despite the challenge of gathering such a large amount of money. He reassured the team, saying it was possible. Soon after, they quickly arranged a meeting at a club to complete the transaction, placing a GPS tracker in the bag of money to trace the murderer's movements. However, the murderer discovered the GPS device in their bag and outsmarted the detectives by placing it in another car, making it impossible for the team to follow them. The detectives then questioned the transaction agent to learn more about the deal. She explained that she only served as a middleman and didn't know the identities of the buyer or seller, as all transactions were conducted through the dark web. Shortly after, Ai-soo proposed a new plan to lure the murderers by offering antique items, but it required the involvement of an elderly person. Kang Yoon then asked her father to help with the operation, hoping he could act as bait for the criminals, but he initially refused for various reasons. Meanwhile, Ai-soo met with a woman familiar with the dark web. He requested that she place an enticing offer, which immediately caught the attention of the 2 criminals. With Kang Yoon's father refusing to participate, Ai-soo visited Kang Yoon's home, acting disappointed because they couldn't find anyone to act as bait. Overhearing this, Kang Yoon's father reconsidered and agreed to help, but he had concerns about Kang Yoon's mother. As a result, they came up with a plan to send Kang Yoon's mother on a vacation by gifting her a free voucher to her dream destination. The plan worked perfectly with Kang Yoon's mother went on vacation, allowing them to move forward without worry. Soon, they set up CCTV cameras to record the criminals' actions and coordinated their strategy to make the arrest. From Isu's house, they monitored everything. After 3 days of waiting, the murderer finally appeared, ready to execute his plan. The detective team was fully prepared. Isu's father disguised himself as an elderly man and welcomed the perpetrator, who was disguised as a volunteer for taking funeral photos, into their home. Kang Yoon was ready to step in at the right moment, but the perpetrator suddenly offered food and drink to Isu's father. With everything proceeded according to plan, the detectives watching closely. When Kang Yoon's father pretended to drink the offered beverage, he suddenly feigned sleep. As the perpetrator prepared to inject nicotine into his body, Kang Yoon's father pointed a gun at him and ordered him to step back. However, the criminal resisted, grabbing a knife and holding it to Kang Yoon's father's neck, heightening the tension in the room. In the end, they decided to surrender by placing the gun on the floor. But suddenly, Isu burst out from the kitchen and delivered a powerful kick to one of the attackers, causing him to drop the knife. With quick teamwork, they managed to arrest both murderers. This success left the head of team 2 frustrated, as he now faced consequences for failing to solve the case himself. Soon afterward, Kang Yoon reported to her superiors, requesting a press conference to announce their successful collaboration on the case. Meanwhile, Isu decided to donate the ancient seal from the Joseon era to the country, a move that filled his father with pride and likely boosted his campaign for mayor. Not long after, Team 1 received a new case involving a body discovered in an abandoned office building. A real estate agent had found the victim while showing the property to a potential tenant. This case posed new challenges for the detective team, as they needed to uncover both the cause of death and the identity of the perpetrator. When Team 1, led by Kang Yoon, arrived at the scene, they began carefully examining the victim and the surroundings, while 3 colleagues searched other areas of the building. At that moment, Isu noticed the body hidden behind a shelf, and this caught Kang Yoon's attention. Though he had previously pretended to be brave around corpses, seeing one up close left him visibly shaken. Recognizing the face, Isu realized the victim was Choi Soo-no, the CEO of SW Soft. Kang Yoon then instructed Kyung-jin to review the CCTV footage and investigate Choi Soo-no's car. Meanwhile, she and Isu visited Soo-no's wife, who shared details about her husband's intense work stress, his visits to a psychiatrist, recent death threats he had received, and his advice for her to leave for her own safety. After returning from the investigation, Isu couldn't stop thinking about Soo-no's death. Realizing this, Kang Yoon invited him inside her home to talk. As they walked in, Kang Yoon's mother, watching from the yard, looked surprised when Kang Yoon mentioned that Isu was part of her detective team. Not long after, the medical examiner reported that there were no signs of physical violence or injections on the victim, and his stomach was empty. The cause of death was determined to be dehydration, which complicated matters since there was plenty of mineral water at the crime scene, some bottles even within reach of the victim. This odd detail deepened the mystery surrounding his death. Soon after, Kang Yoon and Isu visited a psychiatrist while Junyoung and Kyung-jin investigated the man found in Soo-no's car. Despite their efforts, the team still couldn't uncover any major clues in the case. Not only that, the psychiatrist explained that they couldn't share detailed information without official police authorization, but did reveal that Soo-no had felt his life was in danger. Meanwhile, the man Soo-no had met was found dead in his apartment, already in a state of decomposition. This discovery left the detectives even more puzzled. At that moment, they found 2 bags containing 2 billion won in cash, yet the money hadn't been taken, leaving the team questioning the killer's motive. Soon after, the forensic doctor examined the body of the deceased, Cho Sung-koo, estimating that he had been dead for about a week. Fingerprints on the money bags were traced back to a woman named Hong Eun-na. It turned out that Hong Eun-na had once dated Jean Lee-soo and had a public argument with him that went viral. Upon learning this, I-soo went to see her, only to find that she had no involvement in the murder. Instead, she explained that she had been blackmailed by Cho Sung-koo, who was a patient of hers. Apparently, Sung-koo had threatened her, knowing she came from a wealthy family and was about to get married. He forced her to keep her mental health issues a secret to avoid public embarrassment. Meanwhile, Isu's extended family had a family interview planned. His older brother wanted him to attend, but his stepmother objected, insisting he wasn't truly part of the family. Despite this, Isu decided to go. As he arrived, reporters swarmed him with questions. Later that evening, Kang Yoon's mother waited for her daughter to return home. When she saw Kang Yoon with Isu, she warmly invited him to join their family for dinner. Kang Yoon immediately objected, warning that her mother's cooking could be too salty, spicy, and overloaded with seasonings. True to her word, Isu choked on his first bite, and Kang Yoon quickly passed him a glass of water. Despite the overwhelming flavor, Isu smiled and admitted that the meal, though salty, warmed his heart. The next day, Team 1 resumed their investigation, with Isu deciding to revisit Cho Sung-koo's house to search for more evidence. As he arrived, he encountered a suspicious man. When Isu moved to apprehend him, the man fought back, quickly handcuffing Isu before running away. After freeing himself, Isu spotted the man escaping down the street. Reacting quickly, he grabbed a rope, looped it around himself, and leapt forward, determined not to lose his target. Seeing Isu's risky move to chase down the man, Kang Yoon became frantic and was both relieved and upset when he finally caught the suspect. Around the same time, Kang Yoon received a call from her mother, who said a reporter had been asking about Isu's house and a mysterious woman who had died 25 years ago. Curious, Kang Yoon discovered that her own father was handling this case. After learning that her father was investigating the death of Isu's mother, Kang Yoon approached him for details. Her father then explained that Isu's mother had passed away from an overdose of sleeping pills and had drowned in the bathtub. At the time, young Isu had been present and was so traumatized by the incident that he temporarily lost the ability to speak. Meanwhile, the man whom Isu had captured was being interrogated. It was clear that if he didn't cooperate, he would be suspected of murder. Eventually, the truth came out. The man had been following orders from Wang Zhongtae, a mayoral candidate and a political rival of Isu's father. Soon after, Isu took the man's place to meet with Zhongtae, allowing the team to successfully arrest him. However, Zhongtae was quickly released due to intervention from high-ranking officials, allowing him to avoid further questioning. Not long after, on the anniversary of his mother's passing, Isu visited her grave. While there, he thought about where Cho Sung-koo might have hidden evidence, suspecting that a USB drive might be stashed in Sung-koo's family cemetery. Later, Isu and Kang Yoon went to investigate, and behind a displayed photo, they found the USB. Checking its contents, they uncovered video files showing Cho Sung-koo blackmailing his victims. In one of the videos, Hong Eun-ah appeared, visibly struggling with her mental health, as she burned her personal belongings without any clear reason. Isu then reached out to Hong Eun-ah, asking if her psychiatrist, Dr. So, was aware of the blackmail. Eun-ah admitted that she had informed Dr. So about the blackmail and had even voiced her concerns to him. Upon learning this, Isu began to suspect Dr. So as the murderer. He believed that Seo might have been leaking his patient's mental health information to Sung-koo, who then used it to blackmail them. Despite his team's doubts, Isu was convinced that Sung-koo's death was connected to the blackmail scheme. Not only that, the fact that both Sung-koo and Choi Soo-no had been killed with a single, precise cut to the neck suggested that the killer had professional knowledge of human anatomy, making the murders appear highly calculated. There was a theory that Soo-no's death might have been caused by hypnosis therapy administered by Dr. So. This could explain how Soo-no became dehydrated, even though he was surrounded by mineral water. To test this idea, Park Jun-young suggested posing as one of Seo's patients. If Jun-young could be hypnotized, it would strongly indicate that Seo had the power to manipulate people to dangerous levels. Though unsure, Jun-young agreed to give it a try. To make Jun-young look like a wealthy patient, Isu dressed him up in stylish clothes and accessories. When they met with Dr. So, Jun-young requested to be hypnotized to develop positive feelings toward Isu, the person he disliked most. After the session, Jun-young returned to the office, and Kang Yoon asked about the experience. He dismissed it, saying the hypnosis seemed fake. However, something unexpected happened later when Isu accidentally pricked his hand with a sharp pencil. Jun-young, visibly concerned, insisted on taking Isu for medical attention. This unusual reaction made the team realize that Dr. So's hypnosis was indeed powerful and had worked. That evening, Isu visited a psychiatry professor at Hankook University who had once advised Dr. So. The professor revealed that Dr. So had a unique ability to read minds, a technique not typically recommended for psychiatrists as it could be harmful for both the patient and the psychiatrist. As they spoke, Isu noticed an award in the professor's office, one very similar to an award in Dr. So's office. Examining it closely, Isu spotted a small knife inside the professor's award. But in Dr. So's version of the award, the knife was missing. This heightened Isu's suspicions, and he asked the professor for help to uncover the truth. The next day, Isu invited Dr. So to dinner in a flower garden. According to the plan he had set up with the professor, Isu began a light hypnosis session on Dr. So. The professor then joined in, guiding Dr. So further into a trance. Under hypnosis, Dr. So ended up confessing to the murders of both Sung-koo and Soo-noo, providing the police with the evidence they needed to arrest her. Later, Kang-yoon accompanied Isu to Dr. So's hidden room to retrieve a knife as crucial evidence. But while searching, Isu was startled to see a painting on the ceiling that resembled one he had seen in his dreams. At the same time, Dr. So requested a meeting with Isu through her lawyer. Not long after, in prison, they discussed the dreams Isu had been having. Dr. So revealed that she had manipulated his memories, bringing him into hypnosis to alter his recall of his mother's death. She explained that during a session meant to help him forget his mother's tragic death, she had also used hypnotherapy to bring those memories back. In that moment, Dr. So guided Isu through his memories, taking him back to the scene where he remembered his mother's lifeless body in the bathtub. The realization was shocking and deeply unsettling for Isu. Leaving the prison, he felt overwhelmed and confused. Desperate for answers, he rushed to his father's office, interrupting an important meeting with his colleagues to confront him and demand the truth. Realizing the seriousness of the conversation, everyone quietly left the room, including Sung-ju. Alone with his father, Isu confronted him, asking if it was true that his mother had done something terrible that led to her death. His father didn't deny it. He admitted it was true, explaining that when he found them, Isu was unconscious and his mother was lifeless in the bathtub. At that time, Mr. Choi had been with him, advising him to take Isu home, as the traumatic event had left him deeply shaken. Young Isu was so distressed he couldn't eat or do anything, so his father arranged for a doctor to erase these painful memories and replace them with a gentler story about his mother's death. When Isu returned home, his father hesitated to tell him the whole truth, but Mr. Choi reminded him that Isu was old enough to know now. His father assured him that everything he had done was to protect him. But Isu felt betrayed, believing his father had put his own reputation above their family's well-being. Outside, Sung-ju tried to approach him, but Isu didn't stop or say anything. He went straight home, but couldn't bring himself to go inside. Just then, Kang-yoon, who had just finished work, noticed him and came over. Seeing his distress, she suggested they go somewhere calm where he could relax. Once away from the house, Isu opened up about his mother's death. Kang-yoon listened and shared that she had also looked into it. Overcome with guilt, Isu began blaming himself, but Kang-yoon urged him not to dwell on those thoughts. After a while, she left him alone, giving him space to process his emotions. Meanwhile, Kang-yoon approached reporters and asked them to withhold any stories related to Isu and his mother. In return, she offered them other significant news, and they agreed to exchange the information. Later, Isu had another discussion with his father about his mother's death. Together, they remembered happier times, and his father looked sadly at an old photo of his wife, reflecting on the past. The next day, a new case emerged, the mysterious death of an artist named Han Yu-ra. At that moment, Kang-yoon and the team were assigned to investigate, but Isu, still weighed down by his family revelations, found it hard to focus. Not long after, Mr. Choi approached Isu and shared warm stories about his mother, including the meaning behind his name. Apparently, she had chosen it in the hope that he would grow up to be someone who always helps others. This small reminder brought a sense of comfort to Isu, helping him reconnect with the positive memories of his mother. Meanwhile, Isu's friend, who had been at the crime scene when Yura died, was arrested as a suspect in her murder. Kang Yoon and her team began questioning the director and others who were present, but nobody gave clear answers. Feeling desperate, Isu's friend pleaded for his help, urging him to return to the police station and assist in the investigation. Determined to clear his friend's name, Isu joined Kang Yoon and the team in looking deeper into the case. After conducting several investigations, they concluded that Isu's friend was not guilty. Their focus then shifted to a new suspect, Baek Sung-hee, an artist with a mysterious connection to Yura. Shortly after, Isu approached Baek Sung-hee with caution to encourage her cooperation in the investigation. Initially reluctant, Sung-hee eventually agreed to speak. During questioning, she admitted to meeting Yura and practicing a scene together before the incident. Sung-hee also mentioned a stalker who had been persistently following Yura, suggesting he could be the actual culprit. Kang Yoon later presented these findings to her superiors, but they insisted on holding Isu's friend responsible as the main suspect. Standing her ground, Kang Yoon argued that there was no evidence of any motive for Isu's friend to kill Yura. She also requested her superiors to give them a chance to investigate further, and they agreed, giving her a strict 2-day deadline to solve the case. With fresh determination, the investigation restarted. Isu and Kang Yoon visited Yura's home, where they learned she and her father rarely saw each other. They also discovered a CCTV camera installed in Yura's room, but her father behaved strangely, mentioning several unknown callers who had contacted him after her death. Next, Isu and Kang Yoon met with Yura's manager to discuss the suspected stalker. The manager identified the stalker as Han Num-soo and shared chat logs, showing his relentless attempts to make Yura's girlfriend. When Kang Yoon brought up the possibility of an autopsy, the manager became visibly nervous. Moments later, a funeral director then arrived and revealed that he had a close, almost familial relationship with Yura's manager, treating her like a younger sister. Meanwhile, Sung-ju reached out, expressing concern over their recent argument with their father. He advised Isu not to dwell too much on their father's actions and encouraged him to let go of any resentment. Oddly, he also suggested that Isu quit his job, which puzzled Isu since his brother had always seemed supportive of his career. The next day, the investigation continued. Kang Yoon, Isu, and their team carefully reviewed CCTV footage and noticed Yura's manager frequently visiting her home, even during filming sessions. This raised suspicions, so they decided to visit the manager's house. Initially, they were denied entry, but Isu managed to get them in by pretending to be a potential buyer interested in viewing an apartment. Inside, they discovered incriminating evidence directly linking the manager to Yura's murder, bringing them one step closer to solving the case. Kang Yoon then instructed Jun-young to keep a close watch on Yura's manager. While tailing him, Jun-young saw the manager consulting a fortune teller, which led to a major break in the case. Using the fortune teller's insights, Kang Yoon's acting skills, and Isu's plan to gather all the actors and directors involved, they cornered Yura's manager. Under pressure, he confessed to the crime, revealing that Yura had realized her manager was stalking her and had intended to report him to the police. During questioning, the manager admitted he was frustrated and hurt by Yura's rejection. He couldn't bear the thought of her turning him over to the authorities. Later, as they continued their investigation, a fortune teller approached Isu and sensed his sadness. The fortune teller reassured him, predicting that he would eventually find the answers he sought and encouraging him not to worry. After Yura's funeral, more details surfaced. It was discovered that Num-soo had selfishly hidden his stalking behavior. Sung-hee appeared innocent, and Isu's friend was revealed to be struggling with drug use. Reflecting on everything, Isu returned to his childhood home, where he recalled memories of happier days with his mother. Meanwhile, Kang Yoon had dinner with her parents, but was interrupted by a call from Song-wook, the manager of the Orion community. She rushed to the meeting location only to find Song-wook dead. It turned out that a year earlier, Kang Yoon's father had investigated the Orion community, leading to his dismissal from the police force. Before he died, Song-wook managed to utter the name Bo-ri. Moments later, Song-wook was pushed from the top of a building, dying instantly. Not long after, Kang Yoon learned that another person from Songwook's group had also died mysteriously, this time in a lake. She and Jun Young visited the family of the second victim. At that moment, his sister mentioned that her brother had been a swimming instructor, making it highly unlikely for him to drown easily. In the end, she agreed to an autopsy if it would help uncover the truth. Later, Kang Yoon found Songwook's phone, containing a conversation with her seniors. This led to her being called in for questioning, with her superiors present. Kang Yoon explained that she was connected to Songwook because he wanted to expose the truth about the Orion group. However, her senior accused her of being unprofessional, claiming she was too involved in a case that was connected to her father. Not only that, they also ordered her to take a break from the investigation, despite her protests. After leaving the room, Kang Yoon accidentally ran into Soo, but she avoided discussing the case with him. Instead, she reached out to her seniors for support, certain that Songwook's death was not accidental. Curious about what was troubling Kang Yoon, Soo decided to meet with her senior as well. However, the senior reprimanded Kang Yoon for her persistence, telling her to take a break from investigating. Determined to find answers, Kang Yoon spoke with Songwook's wife, but the woman was reluctant to share anything and refused to allow an autopsy on her husband's body. She became even more guarded when she learned Kang Yoon's father had once investigated the Orion community. Keeping her investigation hidden from her father, Kang Yoon began reviewing the evidence he had collected before. She noticed several inconsistencies that raised more questions. At the same time, Soo, equally intrigued, began looking into the Orion community with the help of Mr. Choi. Soon, Kang Yoon and Soo met again on the bridge where she often went to clear her mind. At that moment, Soo assured her that he trusted her instincts as much as she trusted her father's and promised to help. Additionally, Kang Yoon mentioned that she would be leaving for a while, but didn't say where she was going. The following day, Kang Yoon bid farewell to her parents, explaining that she needed time to find peace. At the same time, Soo and his friends discovered that the drowning victim had actually been murdered. They also found a video showing Songwook being chased by a mysterious figure. Later, Soo met with Songwook's wife, who seemed to be hiding something significant. Mr. Choi then shared information about the Orion community, which was led by a figure named Bo-ri. Determined to learn more, Soo decided to meet with Bo-ri. At the same time, Kang Yoon took on a disguise to infiltrate the community as a member. During his meeting with Bo-ri, Soo listened as Bo-ri spoke about his life, sharing stories of hardship and a serious accident he'd endured. He claimed to have lived 5 lives, an unusual belief that seemed to confuse and influence his followers, some of whom even took their own lives. During a training session at the Orion community, Kang Yoon met a young woman named Yeji, who was eager to meet Bo-ri. At that moment, Yeji opened up to Kang Yoon, sharing her difficult life story and her hope that her next life would bring her happiness. Late that night, in the quiet of the Orion grounds, Kang Yoon began her investigation. She attempted to sneak into Bo-ri's private residence, but soon realized she was being followed. To her relief, it was Soo. At the same time, Kang Yoon Sr. secretly met with Bo-ri, revealing that he had been helping her cover up his crimes. Later, when Kang Yoon and Soo searched Bo-ri's room for clues, they heard footsteps approaching, making them feel tense and pressured. Quickly, Soo came up with a plan. He pretended to be looking for the kitchen, distracting Bo-ri's subordinate long enough for them to continue searching. As soon as they found evidence, including fingerprints, Soo sent everything to Mr. Choi. The investigation continued, with Kang Yoon's colleagues digging deeper. They discovered that Bo-ri had faked his story about a past accident and had even undergone plastic surgery to change his appearance. Shortly after, one of Kang Yoon's colleagues visited Songwook's wife again, hoping to get her permission for an autopsy. At the same time, Bo-ri reviewed the community member records and noticed something suspicious. An undercover reporter was soon kidnapped by Bo-ri's followers, who suspected her of betrayal. When Kang Yoon found out, she rushed to rescue her, leading to a confrontation. Thankfully, Soo arrived just in time to help. But as they fought off Bo-ri's followers, more of them appeared, trapping Kang Yoon and Soo in a room that began filling with water, leaving them close to drowning. Kang Yoon, terrified of tight spaces and water, began to panic, but Ai-soo stayed close, trying to keep her awake and calm. During this time, Mr. Choi met with Kang Yoon's team and shared crucial information about Bo-ri, using footage captured by a drone that Ai-soo had set up earlier. Without waiting for an official warrant, Kang Yoon's team set out to rescue them. Just as Bo-ri tried to escape, Kang Yoon's quick-acting partner caught him, allowing the team to focus on finding Kang Yoon and Ai-soo. Soon after, Kang Yoon's police friends discovered something strange in the basement and realized that their missing colleagues were trapped there. Inside, Ai-soo heard the rescue team coming and shouted for them to lower the water level. As the water drained, Kang Yoon passed out, and Ai-soo performed CPR until she finally regained consciousness. With Bo-ri and his gang now in custody, the investigation moved forward. During Song-wook's autopsy, Kang Yoon Sr. found a hidden flash drive that Song-wook had accidentally swallowed. The drive contained solid evidence of Bo-ri's criminal activities and police corruption, leading to the arrest of Kang Yoon's corrupt senior. The next day, Kang Yoon's father was reinstated in his position and cleared of all bribery charges. That night, a mysterious stranger was found dead at Ai-soo's house, and Kang Yoon thanked Ai-soo for saving her life during the ordeal. As a result of the case, the friendship between Ai-soo and Jun-young grew stronger. Meanwhile, at Ai-soo's father's house, his stepmother discovered a body and immediately called the police. Kang Yoon's team, including Ai-soo, rushed to the scene. When they arrived, Ai-soo was shocked to realize that the crime had taken place at his own father's house. Soon after arriving, Kang Yoon and Ai-soo searched the victim's car and found a dead phone and some childhood photos of Ai-soo. They asked the staff for information, but no one seemed to know anything. Turning to Ai-soo's stepmother for answers, they noticed she appeared frustrated and angry. Meanwhile, Ai-soo's father, aware of the case, became worried about how it might affect his reputation and upcoming election. Shortly after, Sung-ju arrived at the scene, but he didn't stay long, wanting instead to comfort their visibly shaken mother. During this time, a male reporter was also there, hunting for any information that could tie the case to the election. After the initial investigation, Kang Yoon and Ai-soo identified the victim as Han Dae-hoon. They then visited Mr. Han's wife, who didn't seem surprised by her husband's sudden death. She explained that he was a frequent gambler and had been missing for about 6 months. Back at Ai-soo's father's house, journalists crowded the area. The male reporter, with help from his boss, had already spread rumors about the case. At that moment, Ai-soo's father took full responsibility, concerned about the impact on his family. He then questioned his wife and older son, but they denied any involvement. Unfortunately, political opponents quickly used the situation to dig up his past, including the suspicious death of his first wife. Meanwhile, Kang Yoon reviewed CCTV footage and discovered that Mr. Han had not been alone on the night he died. At that moment, he had been with someone named Kwang-sik. Therefore, Kang Yoon quickly began tracking Kwang-sik's whereabouts. The autopsy later revealed that Mr. Han had likely been stabbed. Soon after, Kang Yoon and Ai-soo soon found and arrested Kwang-sik, who admitted they had gone up a mountain together and were attacked by a group of strangers. Meanwhile, Jun-young investigated the mountain area and found a rope linked to Mr. Han's death. The last call on Mr. Han's phone was Sung-ju. When Ai-soo asked his brother about it, he explained they had met briefly at a party and exchanged business cards, but there had been no further contact. However, there was something his brother hadn't shared. During their meeting, Mr. Han had hinted that he had important information about him. When Ai-soo returned home, he faced a swarm of journalists, all firing questions at him. Fortunately, Kang Yoon's mother stepped in, defending him and urging Kang Yoon to take him away. Later, as Kang Yoon and Ai-soo talked on the bridge, Ai-soo received a call from his father, who wanted to meet and try to mend their strained relationship. But Ai-soo, still frustrated, wasn't ready to listen and went home, telling the journalists outside to back off. The next day, a new suspect, Choi Hyun-bae, emerged. Kang Yoon's team, with Ai-soo joining them, tracked Mr. Choi's movements and noticed that he was tailing someone else. Acting quickly, they arrested Mr. Choi, while Ai-soo took off after the person Mr. Choi had been following. Kang Yoon was shocked when she discovered a woman tied up in the trunk of a car. At the same time, Ai-soo was stunned to realize that Choi Hyun-bae had been chasing his older brother. Now, both Sung-ju and Choi Hyun-bae were in custody. However, during interrogation, they gave little information and immediately requested lawyers. Later, Isu showed Kang-yoon CCTV footage from a recent publishing event. Kang-yoon felt disappointed that he had waited until now to share it, but Isu explained that he had held back, hoping his brother wouldn't end up in trouble. With Sung-ju's lawyer present, the interrogation resumed. At that moment, Sung-ju revealed that Mr. Han had been blackmailing their mother over an alleged affair. Worried about the potential for bad rumors before the election, he had met with Choi Hyun-bae, promising to protect the family. Meanwhile, the woman Kang-yoon found in the trunk, Mion, gave her statement. She explained that she had been helping Choi Hyun-bae and another man, Hyun-tae, to teach Mr. Han a lesson. However, things had gone wrong, resulting in Mr. Han's death, which prompted Hyun-tae to flee. During this time, Choi Hyun-bae confessed to killing Mr. Han, providing details that led to the case being considered closed. Despite this, disturbing facts came to light. It turned out that on the night Mr. Han was killed, Sung-ju had met with Choi Hyun-bae and given him money to retrieve documents proving his mother's affair with Mr. Han. After the documents were recovered, they were burned, but they had contained a DNA test revealing that Mr. Han was actually Sung-ju's biological father. Soon after, Kang-yoon confided in her father, sharing her doubts that the real mastermind had been caught. Her father, understanding her instincts, explained that cases like these often leave lingering questions. In the end, he assured her that he would find Hyun-tae, who had fled to the Philippines. Meanwhile, Isu uncovered more evidence at the crime scene, including a childhood photo of his brother found in Mr. Han's car, with a message suggesting that Mr. Han was his brother's father. Not long after, Sung-ju confronted their mother, revealing everything, including her alleged order to kill Mr. Han and his discovery that he was his biological father. His mother denied these accusations, but Isu began considering reopening the case. Knowing this, his stepmother pleaded with him not to, fearing it would tear the family apart. Caught between his loyalty to his family and his desire for the truth, Isu felt conflicted, especially as he worried about his brother's safety amidst the family's dark secrets. In the end, Isu decided to quit his job and wrote a heartfelt letter to Kang-yoon. Even though she tried her best to convince him to stay, his mind was made up. He thanked her for everything, but he didn't share anything about his family troubles, keeping that burden to himself. Meanwhile, Isu's father held a press conference with reporters, announcing that he would no longer run for mayor. He requested that they refrain from covering any stories about Isu's biological mother's case, as he believed his son was innocent and wanted to protect him. As Isu prepared to leave, memories of his childhood with his mother resurfaced. He remembered that she used to take sleeping pills regularly. He also recalled a moment when he learned that the pills she was taking could be dangerous for adults, which made him anxious. In an attempt to protect her, Isu secretly replaced her sleeping pills with candy. One day, while talking to his mom, there was a constant knocking on the door, and that's the last memory he had of her. Later, Isu found the bottle of medicine he had hidden, realizing it had the same production date as the time his mother passed away. This made him wonder how she could have died from an overdose when the pills were hidden away. Haunted by guilt over hiding the pills, Isu confessed everything to his father, sharing what he believed had happened. But shortly after leaving the room, he was horrified to learn that his father had suddenly unconscious. Shocked and uncertain about what had happened, Isu went to the police station, hoping to learn more about his mother's case, unaware that his father had already passed. Later, he met with Kang-yoon and told her that his father had once handled his mother's case. As they were talking, two policemen arrived to inform Isu about his father's death, which hit him hard. Later, with Mr. Choi's help, he pushed through the crowd of journalists and made his way to the funeral home. At that moment, Isu was overwhelmed with regret, remembering his father's final words about feeling like a terrible person. At the funeral home, his stepmother arrived and caused a scene, angrily blaming Isu for his father's death and even slapping him. At that moment, Sung-ju stepped in, calming the situation and having the guards escort her to the hospital. After that, it was just Isu and his brother greeting the guests who came to pay their respects. Once the service quieted down, Isu and his brother had a private conversation. Isu admitted that he wasn't convinced their father had done the unthinkable. Hearing this, Sungju suggested that maybe their father had felt overwhelmed by the pressures of the election and simply couldn't cope. But Isu wasn't convinced, insisting that his father wouldn't have done that. He also wanted to see the room where his father had died. In the room, he found a compass he had once given his father, along with a photograph of his mother and a note from his father expressing a wish for happiness together. Seeing these personal items brought tears to Isu's eyes as he realized the depth of his father's regrets and wishes for peace and happiness, giving him a sense of closure amid his grief. Meanwhile, Kang Yoon continued her investigation and found more evidence her father had gathered about Isu's mother's case. When she asked him about it, he brushed it off as if it was nothing unusual. Sensing something important was being overlooked, Kang Yoon arranged to meet with Isu to discuss everything. At the restaurant, Kang Yoon insisted that Isu eat something. As they sat together, Isu opened up, sharing everything he could remember, including the details of his last conversation with his father. Kang Yoon then gently encouraged him to try to recall the events surrounding his mother's death. As they spoke, she began to understand why someone might want to harm Isu's parents. When his mother died, all her assets were meant to go to young Isu. But after his father's recent death, Isu's older brother, Sungju, would inherit everything. The next day, Isu noticed a group of people looking at photos of suspects. He pointed to a picture of his stepmother, explaining that she used to visit their home frequently before his mother passed away. Determined to uncover the truth, he asked Mr. Choi to put pressure on Sungju to reveal what he knew about their mother's death. Mr. Choi moved swiftly, following Sungju and staging a minor car accident to inspect Sungju's car closely. At the same time, in the hospital, Isu's stepmother received a call from her assistant, informing her that the police had started investigating. Meanwhile, Isu confronted Sungju directly, recounting everything he knew, including his stepmother's visits before his mother's death. He expressed his commitment to uncovering the full truth, no matter what it would take. Later, Sungju went to the hospital to speak with his mother. She confronted him, asking if he had truly killed his father. Sungju didn't deny it. Instead, he admitted that on the night of their father's death, he had begged for forgiveness after their father discovered their involvement in past crimes. However, their father refused to forgive them, demanding they turn themselves in. In desperation, Sungju had slipped sleeping pills into his father's drink, ultimately causing his death. While this unfolded, Kang Yoon and her team investigated further, uncovering Sungju's involvement in the murder of Isu's father. But when she told Isu, he struggled to believe it, insisting that Sungju couldn't be capable of such an act. Determined to get to the bottom of everything, Kang Yoon continued her investigation. She found old evidence from Isu's mother's case and noticed 2 sets of children's fingerprints at the scene. Realizing the importance of this clue, she instructed her team to analyze the prints and find out who they belonged to, planning to share this discovery with Isu as soon as she could. Isu then met with Kim Do-young, his stepmother's former driver. Do-young shared that on the night of Isu's mother's death, he had been with Isu's stepmother. At that moment, she had been visibly angry and had insisted on going to Isu's house. Later, Do-young had dropped her off at 7 p.m., yet Isu's mother hadn't passed away until 10 p.m. This timeline made Isu wonder about what could have happened in those hours. Do-young also mentioned that he saw Sungju leaving the scene, but wasn't sure where he went. After hearing this, Isu called Mr. Choi, who mentioned that Sungju had been involved in a car accident the same night his mother died, though he didn't know the exact location. The next day, Isu met with Kang Yoon and asked for her help in tracking down where Sungju's accident occurred. She quickly uncovered that the accident had happened right in front of Isu's childhood home, where his mother had lived. This discovery raised more questions, but Sungju seemed unaffected by the suspicions. Instead, he had taken over as chairman of Hunsu Group, stepping into his father's position. Isu tried to approach Sungju calmly about their mother, but Sungju avoided the question. Soon after, Mr. Choi confronted Sungju directly, asking him if he was responsible for the deaths of Isu's parents. Sungju did not deny it, and then fired Mr. Choi. When Isu saw the results from the fingerprint analysis, he called Sungju to meet him again, this time at his own home. Once more, Isu asked if Sung-ju had killed their mother, but he continued to dodge the question until Isu raised a gun, forcing the truth out. Finally, Sung-ju admitted to killing Isu's mother. He described how, on that night, he had found her very distressed over her impending divorce, even hinting that she wanted to do the unthinkable. Sung-ju had begged her not to marry his father, but when he saw a message from his father on her phone, his anger and determination to kill her grew stronger. He even coldly mentioned that he had considered killing Isu that same night to take care of everything. The conversation turned violent, and a fierce fight broke out. Though Sung-ju was injured, Isu chose not to kill him. Instead, he told Sung-ju he would have to live with the weight of his actions, carrying his regret and guilt forever. Shortly after, Kang-yoon and her team arrived at Isu's house and took Sung-ju into custody. The following day, Kang-yoon held a press conference, explaining everything about the murder of Isu's parents. Later, Isu visited his parents' graves, still filled with sadness, but finally coming to terms with everything that had happened. Afterward, he visited Kang-yoon's mother, who kindly offered to cook him soup, comforting him like a mother. When he sat down to eat, the food reminded him of his own mother's cooking, bringing back memories that made him emotional. Meanwhile, back at the police station, Kang-yoon and her team carried on with their duties, feeling the absence of Isu. Eventually, Isu decided to step down as chairman of Hunsu Group, passing the role to Mr. Choi. Then, he returned to the police station, ready to resume his work. To his surprise and relief, Kang-yoon hadn't accepted his resignation letter, meaning he was still a member of the police force. Moral lesson from the story: in complicated family matters, sometimes ignorance really is bliss, until someone brings out the DNA test. And remember, if your family secrets are piling up, maybe consider starting a detective agency instead of running for office.